Hey, Colby Miller here, independent singer-songwriter out of Nashville, Tennessee, and back with another behind the scenes, this time of my newest single, Outlaw Hearts, which has just come out on all streaming platforms. And I thought I would give you the story behind the song, or rather the story of the song, what the song is about. So somewhere in listening to a bunch of outlaw country stuff, Waylon, Willie, Merle, etc., and watching a bunch of gangster shows like Pinky Blinders and Sopranos and such, I got this idea to write a real gangster song, or rather a song about a real gangster. Find something within the narrative of these historical figures that I could build a song around. And that kind of led me to thinking about John Dillinger. John Dillinger is one of the more infamous bank robbers of all time, and also happens to be from my home state of Indiana. Now, mind you, I've never written a song like this research project, but once I got into it, it really kind of developed quickly and in a very cool fashion, because one of the first things I uncovered was this love story within his narrative with Evelyn Billie Frechette. And amidst all of these infamous actions and these bank robberies and these shootouts and all of this, there was an underlying love story that these two shared. And you got to understand something about these two characters. John Dillinger was kind of just a bank robber. He was a thief. That's really what he was. Wasn't much more than that. He was a young thief, got sent to jail, came out, graduated to robbing banks. Now, he became a legend and a rock star because he was doing this during the Depression, a time when a lot of Americans and a lot of people in general had lost faith in particularly financial institutions. So somebody going around and sticking up banks made him a legend pretty quickly. Evelyn Billie Frechette is actually the more nuanced character. She's half Native American from Wisconsin. She was forced to go to a Native American boarding school, which, you know, if anything about that history, there was a lot of trauma, a lot of abuse. I make a statement in the song that said Johnny had met a girl with more stories, thicker skin than him. And what I mean by that is I think she was the tougher cookie of the two, even though John was the one that was robbing banks and getting shot at. So the whole story of them takes place over a very compressed amount of time. In fact, John Dillinger's whole story of robbing 20-plus banks happens from June 1933 to July 1934. And my song and the topics that I do within it is actually April 34 to where he was killed by the FBI in July of 1934. But a couple of the key sort of happenings that happen within this story. First one is John breaks out of a jail in Crown Point, Indiana, which is a town in northern Indiana, with a whittled fake gun. Somebody had actually whittled a gun, or what looked like a Colt gun, out of a piece of wood and smuggled it to John. He then stuck up a guard at the jail, broke out of it, stole the sheriff's car, drove off into the night. Now, there's accounts that the guard was in on it, and there's some nuance to this story, but nonetheless pretty cool. So, right, he ends up meeting up with Billy. They swap cars, they drive off, and now they're on the run. In fact, John had been put in jail because of a robbery that had gone bad, where there was a sheriff's deputy that was shot and killed, not by John, but by one of his crew. So he's on the run. Billy's on the run with him. They go to St. Paul, Minnesota. They get cornered there by the feds. Somebody had tipped him off. They wake up to the feds outside. There's a big shootout. Somehow they escape this, and really the accounts of how they did are varied, but bullets flying everywhere, seems very dramatic. They get out of town there. Unfortunately, a short time later, they go to what they think is a safe house in Chicago. It's actually a setup. Billie Frechette gets arrested. John has to kind of take off without her. She gets put away, for a couple of years, and then just a couple of months later, John gets set up at a place called the Biograph Theater in Chicago, Illinois, and coming outside of it after watching a film is gunned down in the alley by the feds. So that's really the story of these two. Now, the other cool part of it, one of the reasons why we know the name John Dillinger and why he really survived history is because of Billie herself. She actually, after getting out of jail, carried on the tale, wrote a short story pamphlet that she would go around and do speaking engagements telling people of the legend of John. And it's one of the reasons why we know kind of as much about him as we do, because again, he was just a petty thief. But as I mentioned, kind of all of this culminated into this song, and somehow in this process is where I got the hook of a hot burning love that fused their outlaw hearts, because it really was an interesting tale of how they stuck together through some very trying times and circumstances that had really none but one end that was going to occur. But nonetheless, was an awesome story to dive into. It was a very interesting way for me to write a song. Maybe I'll do it again someday, I'm not sure, but for this point in time, I hope you do go on to any of the streaming platforms of your choice, Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube, anywhere that you get your music from, and download and listen to Outlaw Hearts, and now you'll know a little bit more of what it's about. Cheers to you. Thanks.